Good morning. This is Paula at the Barkman Library, and this is Paula's Picks at Barkman. Today I have stories for you about curious creatures, and the first book I have is called The Mysterious Tadpole by Stephen Kellogg. And I'd like to thank Penguin Publishing for allowing me to read this book, The Mysterious Tadpole. Uncle McAllister lived in Scotland. Every year, he sent Lewis a birthday gift for his nature collection. "This is the best one yet," cried Lewis. The next day, he took entire collection to his school for show and tell. And there he is, that tiny little tadpole, if you can see. "Class, this is a tadpole," said Mrs. Shelbert. She asked Lewis to bring it back often so that they could all watch it become a frog. Lewis named the tadpole Alphonse. Every day, Alphonse ate several cheeseburgers. Lewis found that he was eager to learn. When Alphonse became too big for his jar, Lewis moved him into the kitchen sink. After Alphonse outgrew the sink, Lewis's parents agreed to let him use the bathtub. There he is, in the bathtub. One day, Mrs. Shelbert decided that Alphonse was not turning into an ordinary frog. She asked Lewis to stop bringing him to the school. By the time summer vacation arrived, Alphonse was enormous. "He's too big for the bathtub," said Lewis's mother. "He's too big for the apartment," said Lewis's father. "He needs a swimming pool," said Lewis. "There is no place in our apartment for a swimming pool," said his parents. Lewis suggested that they buy the parking lot next door and build a swimming pool. "It would cost more money than we have," said his parents. "Your tadpole will have to be donated to the zoo." The thought of Alphonse in a cage made Lewis very sad. Then in the middle of the night, Lewis remembered that the junior high had a swimming pool that nobody was using for the summer. Lewis hid Alphonse under a rug and smuggled him into the school. After making sure that Alphonse felt at home, Lewis went back to bed. Every morning, Lewis spent several hours swimming with his friend. In the afternoon, he earned the money for Alphonse's cheeseburgers by delivering newspapers. Meanwhile, the training continued. Alphonse learned to retrieve things from the bottom of the pool. Summer vacation passed quickly. Lewis worried what would happen to Alphonse now that the school had reopened. As soon as the first day ended, he ran to the junior high. The students were getting ready for their after-school activities. Lewis arrived just as the first swimming race began. Alphonse was delighted to see all the swimmers. "It's a submarine from another planet," bellowed the coach. "Call the police, call the Navy." No, it's a tadpole," cried Lewis. "He's my pet." The coach was upset and confused. "You have until tomorrow," he cried, "to get that creature out of the pool." Lewis didn't know what to do. On the way home, he met his friend, Miss Severs, the librarian, and he told her his problem. Miss Severs went back to the junior high school with Lewis, but when she saw Alphonse, she was so shocked that she dropped her purse and the books she was carrying into the swimming pool. Alphonse retrieved them. Then Miss Severs telephoned Lewis's Uncle McAllister in Scotland. He told her that he had caught the little tadpole in Loch Ness, a large lake near his cottage. Miss Severs said, "I'm convinced that your uncle has given you a very rare Loch Ness monster." "I don't care," cried Lewis. "He's my pet and I love him." He begged Miss Severs to help him raise enough money to buy the parking lot near his apartment so he could build a swimming pool for Alphonse. Suddenly, Miss Severs had an idea. In 1639, there was a battle in our city's harbor, she said. A pirate treasure ship was sunk, and no one had ever been able to find it. Maybe we can. The next morning, Miss Severs and Louis rented a boat. In the middle of the harbor, Louis showed Alphonse a picture of the treasure chest. Alphonse disappeared on the water. There, he's got it. Louis and Miss Severs bought the parking lot. They hired some helpers. And when the pool was complete, all the children in the city were invited to swim. That night, Louis said, "Alphonse, next week is my birthday, which means that we've been friends for almost a year." Now, far away in Scotland, Uncle McAllister was also thinking about the approaching birthday. While out hiking, he discovered an unusual stone in a clump of grass and sticks. "A perfect gift for my nephew," he cried. "I will deliver it in person." Uncle McAllister arrived at Louis's apartment and gave Louis the present. Louis couldn't wait to add it to his collection. Suddenly, a crack appeared in the stone. See it? Look what came out. Do you think he's going to be a big, gigantic bird now? I think so. So that was the Mysterious Tadpole. Now I want to read you What Faust Saw by Matt Otley. And thank you to Penguin Press for allowing me to read this. What Faust Saw. One night, Faust woke up, looked out the window, and saw something very strange. He tried to wake up Mom and Isabel and Clayton, even Dad, but they didn't seem to want to wake up. Faust hid. He howled. That woke up Dad. Dad looked everywhere. Well, almost everywhere, but he couldn't see anything strange. "Bad dog," said Dad. He locked Faust outside. Poor Faust. Soon he was back inside. Bad dog," said Mom. Outside again. No, inside again. Bad dog," said Dad and Mom and Isabel and Clayton. Now Faust was getting angry. It wasn't his fault. He decided to run away. Then they'll be sorry. But he was followed. "Go away," he barked. Someone else heard him bark too. The dog catcher. Faust fled, but he was tired. After all, he didn't get much sleep. "Off to the pound with you," said the dog catcher. "No strays allowed in this neighborhood." The next morning, Dad and Mom and Isabel and Clayton came to the pound. Faust decided to forgive them and go home. He also decided that the next time he woke up and saw something strange, he would go back to sleep. That was What Faust Saw by Matt Otley. Now I have one that's about a couch creature. It's called He Came with the Couch by David Slonim. And I am reading this with permission from Chronicle Books. he came with the couch. Our family needed a new couch. We looked and looked, but we couldn't find a couch that we liked. By nighttime, all we had found was a tin horn for me and a squeaky bone for Roscoe. Then Dad suddenly hit the brakes. "Ah," he said, "Larry's 24-hour rummage." Soon we were heading home with a new couch. "Who is that back there?" I asked. "I don't know," said Dad. "He came with the couch." The next morning, he was still there. So I gave him some toast and let him play with Bonnie. "I'm Sophie," I told him. "Who are you?" But he didn't say anything. "Can we keep him?" I asked. "No," said Dad. Mom and Dad tried to persuade him to leave, but he didn't budge. "Maybe he's sick," I said, so they called the doctor. "It's an acute case of upholsterosis," said the doctor. "He needs to get out more." So we took him to the Grand Canyon. We took him to the beach. We took him to Washington, D.C., but he never left the couch. Mom and Dad said we just have to get used to him. "Great," I said. Then one day, a branch snapped, and I fell from my tree. "Help!" I screamed. Then there was a sudden crash. He saved me. That's why we're all so glad he came with the couch. But it wasn't long before we were off to another rummage sale. She came with the chair. He came with the couch by David Slonim. Now I have one more called Love Monster and the Scary Something by Rachel Bright. And I am reading this, thank you to Macmillan. Love Monster and the Scary Something. It was way past bedtime o'clock in Cutesville, and everyone was fast asleep. Everyone, that is, except one particular monster. "Hello, Love Monster." You see, just like every night, he made a cup of hot milk with chocolate sprinkles and continued his way up the stairs. 1, 2, 3, 4. As usual, he'd read 15 and a half bedtime stories, closed his eyes, and snuggled in tight with Teddy. But that night, the harder he tried to nod off, the awaker he was, and the later and darker and spookier it got. So Love Monster lay and listened to the sounds of the shadowy night. Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. That was the clock. Shh, shh. That was the song of the wind in the leaves. Hoo, 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 hoo. That was the Cutesville owls. Rustle, rustle. That was the, oh, hold on. What was that? It sounded like something in the yard. Creak. Now it sounded like something downstairs. Bang! Ah! He climbed under the comforter, his heart beating loud and fast. There was definitely something out there, and that something had definitely gotten in. Pitter-pat, pitter-pat, pitter-pat. Oh, it sounded like the something had terrible, twisterly toenails. Bump, bumpity, shuffle, shuffle, bump. Oh no! It sounded like the something with terrible twisterly toenails was coming up the stairs. Crunch, crunch, crunchity crunch, eek! It sounded like the something with terrible twisterly toenails had great big teeth, and it sounded hungry. Suddenly, Love Monster could bear it no longer. Somehow, hiding from the something outside got harder than finding something brave inside. So he flung back the covers, flicked on the flashlight. Beep! Went the something. Little button. As it turned out, Love Monster hadn't been the only one who couldn't sleep that night. And he wasn't the only one who didn't want to be alone. And as the tiniest, fluffiest bunny in Cutesville explained to his, I suppose, a bit groggly-eyed friend, they both laughed and laughed until their tummies ached. And you know what? The dark just didn't seem that spooky anymore. You see, sometimes it's only when you're brave enough to face what you're afraid of that you find out there was nothing to be scared of after all. That was the Love Monster and the Scary Something. And now I have a little craft for you that is creating your own little creatures. There's one of them. There's another one. And this is called squish painting. This was actually the first time I've ever done it. So what you need is a piece of paper. And this is like a thin cardstock, but you could also use like construction paper. And then you need some paint, whatever colors. I'm using actually acrylic paint, but you can use tempera or other paints. And then what you want to do is take your paint and drop it on the paper. You can drop, I'm going to show you in a second, like I did. You could also do a line, however you want, and use another color. I think I'm going to use the yellow, and I'm going to put like a squiggle. Oh, the yellow is kind of thin. Let me see if I can show you. Then you do that, and then you can either fold it, the two short ends together, or you could fold the two long ends together. I'm going to fold the two short ends together. And you can use as many paint as you want. And this is where you squish. You might have actually done this before. Squish, 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 squish. And then when you open it up, it makes a pattern. And then you have to let it dry. You have to be patient and let it dry. Cut out the pattern. And you can cut it all out, or you can cut some of it, like cropping it. And then I used a bunch of Google eyes to make him kind of a creature looking. And then one more thing is I put him on a craft stick, tape a craft stick on. Here's my second one. He's kind of got legs there. But the first ones I didn't even want to glue googly eyes on. Let me see if I can show you this really close. This was one I did, and then if you can see, I thought those look like eyes right there. That looks like a mouth and a head, and then he's got all these puffy kind of wings, so I just left it alone just like that. This is another one that I didn't want to glue googly eyes on. You can see here's his head, and then I thought those look like eyes, and then he had this weird kind of like trunk right here. And then these were like his legs. So you can do anything that you want with your creatures. Make your creatures. And thank you for joining me. I will see you next week.